Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Marone for Westchester Talk Radio. And once again, we are with our friends at Hightower Westchester. And we continue with our series, What Should I Focus On in my what this time? In my 30s. And to talk with us about that, Richard Flahive, Private Wealth Advisor and Director of Research and Planning at Hightower. Once again, it's great to see you, Richard.
Good to see you, Bob. How are things?
Pretty well. Things are pretty well. I remember vaguely my 30s, but what we knew is we need you to help us advise people who are in their 30s now, shifting a decade later out of their 20s. What are some insights into what one's finances should look like in their 30s?
Sure. Yeah, and thanks, Bob. So, I did the segment on what they should kind of look like in your 20s, and I think shifting a decade later, as much as things are different, they're much the same as well, right? You need to continue to save, continue to invest, continue to plan. So I think those big parameters, as you'll probably hear throughout every decade of this kind of series here, are going to stay pretty consistent. But I think starting again with that favorite topic, the budget, right? So if you created this budget, 4, 5, 10 years ago, whatever it is, but it's important to update it, right? Reflect your current spending, your financial picture. It's going to change. I think the important thing is in all likelihood, your salary is going to be going up. Just because your salaries goes up doesn't necessarily mean your spending has to go up. And those are kind of basic dynamics I think we all know about. But hopefully at this point, you've kind of chipped away at some of that debt, right? If you have any of the high interest bearing credit cards or potentially student loans, and don't be discouraged if you haven't paid them down yet. It's very normal for people to have debt into their 30s, particularly if they've gone back to school. And then you look at like doctors and dentists and things like that. Oftentimes, it takes a lot more time as they're in school a lot longer. So that's something I've done a lot more is this debt reduction strategy for clients in recent years, just because it's become more and more prevalent. And then, I mentioned in the previous decade as well, saving for those kind of big ticket items, right? You potentially could have a family at this point. You could be looking to buy a home, consistently go on a vacation with your family, right? One thing we've seen with some clients, I happen to not be a proponent of this, but you can set up different accounts for different savings goals, right? I kind of lump everything into one account, but several of our clients, hey, we have a wedding checking account or savings account. We have this, we have that. This is for the baby, et cetera. So, certain people like those siloed different accounts. That's something to at least from a planning standpoint can help. Monitor and improve your credit score. Right, you're going to be potentially buying a home. It's important to understand what credit is, what good and bad credit is, and be smart about it. One thing too that popped into my head was 401ks. Right, you might have jumped around to a couple different jobs at this point. Probably a good idea to consolidate those. You can either roll them all into your current 401k plan, or what we would advise is for folks to roll them into an IRA account. At a custodian with, just broadens your investment options and horizon. You're able to invest in more. As you know, those 401k platforms are somewhat limited. But again, going back to the investing part, I mentioned some numbers in the last one, and I'll do it again here. A 30-year-old, it's that 600 and change to get to that $1 million at 67. For someone in their 40s, it doubles $1,250. So that's a difference of, like I said, almost double. So $600 or so, or I think it's $7,500 or so a year. So, important to be consistent with that. And also dive into what your investments are. At this point, you probably have some decent savings if you've been consistent with it. Know your allocation, talk to people if you don't, understand what you're invested in, understand, hey, am I on the right path? I'm a decade older at this point. Does my allocation make sense? So something to keep in mind there.
Well, now, by the time you reach your 30s, Richard, life gets a bit more complicated. And outside of budgeting and investing, talk to us about a few other planning ideas that you have.
Yeah. And I always tell people from the investment standpoint, as long as you're consistent with it, we all see those charts. It's time in the market, not timing the market. And I don't mean to underplay it, but, if you're smart with the investments, you're consistent with it, it will take care of itself, I think. The planning side becomes very important as you get into your 30s and 40s, right? You're listen, you still have a ways out till retirement, but you're planting seeds, you're getting your foundation set. You might have kids, right? At this point, 529 plans, we've discussed it in previous videocasts. the college savings accounts. Those are the best way to really go about that. And legal documents, right? If you have kids now and your estate, quote unquote, is getting a little more complicated, having a will in place, a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, right? God forbid anything were to happen to you. And I've said this before, the amount of people I've seen over the years of all wealth levels without the proper estate planning in place, it's shocking, Bob. Seriously, we see it all the time. What could cost you a couple $1,000 to go and get a will done, by an attorney, the time, for whatever reason, it slips them and they don't do it. So very important. And the next thing is life insurance. At this point, it's likely a good time to kind of pull that trigger. It's usually not necessary until you have dependents, children, or, big liabilities, a mortgage or something along those lines. Now, I always advise people at the minimum, try to look for a term policy. It's cheap. It can cover your liabilities, get you to retirement. It's cheaper the younger and healthy you are, right? That algorithm there. So again, the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to be. This is usually a good time to start looking at that. But what you want your life insurance to really look like is cover those liabilities, those college costs, those lost incomes, right? So that's how you get to that number, and always engage a professional to kind of get you to what makes the most sense for both members, husband and wife or spouse. Like I said, engage professionals. I think this is a time when using a CPA, don't mean this in a self-serving manner. It's purely, listen, life's going to get more complicated. You want to be on the right track. You want to know if the decisions you're making, are going to impact your net worth in a positive or negative way. So very important there. I think the most important thing is start enjoying your life too, right? You've probably built up a decent nest egg where, you can go on vacations and try to enjoy your life, and you're hopefully in a good place here. And like I said in the last video cast, if you don't have $1 million saved yet, guess what? Not a lot of others do. So don't be discouraged. Continue to save, continue to invest. You'll get there.
Finally, Richard, money, among other things, can be a very emotional subject, as you know. I assume it's not different for someone in their 30s, perhaps even more so.
It's a great point, Bob. Everyone thinks, okay, and it's interesting because if you look at the average age of our clients and where they are in their life cycles, it's predominantly folks either approaching retirement, going through it, or in retirement. Normally they have the assets to invest, but I think there's a stigma out there that you can't engage, professionals in our world without $1 million. And that's just not the case, because this is the time when, you're really new responsibilities are coming on board, and getting that planning in place is going to really benefit you. Life gets more complicated, extremely complicated. I'm going through it right now. We have a house, we have a kid, dog. There's a lot going on, and, our days are, 14, 16 hours packed, right? Running around. I got some good sleep last night, so I look okay here. But I think regardless of what people say, though, there is a strong correlation between, being stable financially and being happy, right? I quoted a study. It was a 2018 study, I think, by Northwestern Mutual. And it was 87% of Americans were saying they were happier when they were financially secure. I mean, the numbers, I think we all know, right? And it said, I think half of the respondents cited money as a major stress indicator, higher than even personal relationships, double that of personal relationships. So, utilize this time, as a good moment to build a strong foundation just for that financial security. It's like anything, right? It doesn't happen overnight. You put in the work. I think it's shifting your focus to, thinking about what wealth means, right? It means something different to everybody. And it's not just dollars and cents, right? You want to be able to provide for your loved ones, potentially give back to your community, your town, and just kind of reach new heights as an individual, professionally, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different things that, from an emotional standpoint, are going to come on. And I think, doing these things, as we've cited throughout these decades, will really kind of help put you at ease, as well as the rest of the folks around you, really.
And I would think it would help you professionally. There's nothing better than having very good advice when you're trying to support a family and make a living. Thank you once again, Richard, for this wonderful insight. As always, you and your team offer such a valuable perspective for folks. Again, we've been talking with Richard Flahive. I say his title all the time. because he's good at what he does. He's a private wealth advisor and director of research and planning at Hightower Westchester. As for me, I'm Bob Marone for Westchester Talk Radio. Thank you very much. A job well done, my friend.
Thank you, Bob. Always a pleasure.
We'll talk to you soon.
Hightower Westchester is a group of investment professionals registered with HighTower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, and with HighTower Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Securities are offered through HighTower Securities, LLC. Advisory services are offered through HighTower Advisors, LLC. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. No investment process is free of risk, and there is no guarantee that the investment process or the investment opportunities referenced herein will be profitable. Past performance is not indicative of current or future performance and is not a guarantee. The investment opportunities referenced herein may not be suitable for all investors. All data and information referenced herein are from sources believed to be reliable. Any opinions, news, research, analyses, prices, or other information contained in this research is provided as a general market commentary. It does not constitute investment advice. Hightower Westchester and Hightower shall not in any way be liable for claims and make no expressed or implied representations or warranties as to the accuracy or completeness of the data and other information, or for statements or errors contained in or omissions from the obtained data and information referenced herein. The data and information are provided as of the date referenced. Such data and information are subject to change without notice. This podcast was created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of Hightower Westchester and do not represent those of HighTower Advisors, LLC, or any of its affiliates. HighTower Advisors do not provide tax or legal advice. This material was not intended or written to be used or presented to any entity as tax advice or tax information. Tax laws vary based on the client's individual circumstances and can change at any time without notice. Clients are urged to consult their tax or legal advisor before establishing a retirement plan.